Hello, welcome back. If you're new here, hello, welcome. My name is Charlie, and this is episode 4, I think, of a series I'm doing here where I talk about my Goodreads TBR, like my want to read shelf on Goodreads, and I go through one by one, and I'm trying to remove things. I'm trying to whittle that giant list down to something actually usable, something that I can look at when I'm actually looking for a book to read, and it can actually help me out, because I have a lot of books on there that I know that I don't actually need to read, or like that I don't want to read, or honestly, a lot of the books on there I've already read. I have a lot of books that are book 2 or 3 of a series that I haven't started, and I don't need that. I should read book 1 and go from there. I don't need to have marked book 5 of a series as I want to read this if I don't know if I'm going to like the first one. Things like that. If you are here and you have not seen the previous installments of the series, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. You don't have to watch this in any specific order. I am just going through it in chronological order of when I added these books to my list, but you don't miss anything by jumping in here. And if you like it, there's plenty more for you to watch. These are very much intended to be kind of background noise type videos. They're all like around an hour long, and all I hope is that you sit back, you have it on, it's noise for you, and if you hear me talk about a book and you hear me either take something off that you think I should keep on, or if you hear me leave something on that you think I should take off, let me know. I am looking for all the help that I can get here. I want to narrow this list down, and I'm trying to be as ruthless as I can, and as cutthroat as possible, and remove things if I don't remember what that book's about. I'm just going to take it off the list because I don't need to read that. But there's a lot of gems there that I'm accidentally cutting, and people are very kindly letting me know in the comments that I just removed their favorite book and that they think I should put it back on. So keep that coming, please. There's also several authors on here where I have a bunch of Stephen King, for example, listed on this list, and I'm essentially removing all of them right now because I don't know where to start with Stephen King, and that's one example. There's several authors like that on here, but if you have input on that would also be super helpful. I am going to continue to remove Stephen King, and by the end of this, I hope to have just one Stephen King book on my TBR. Because again, if I don't know that I'm going to like his stuff, I don't need to have a million of his books marked as want to read. I want to read Stephen King, but I don't know that I want to read, this specific book or all of these specific books. I don't know that I like his style yet. So yeah, that's what we're going for here. We took a month off from this type of video in December because there was a lot of like end of the year content that I really wanted to get in, but I'm excited to be back and doing this because there's a lot left on this list, and I really want to get to the end of this project. I go through 100 books ish every month when I record this, and there's, I believe, over 900 books on the TBR, or at least there were when I started this series. I also have definitely been adding books to the TBR, and that's not reflected on this because what I'm going through is an export that I did from my Goodreads, at this point months ago. And so at the end, I'm going to do like kind of another export and just go through the differences. So like the things that I've added since starting this series, and just like tie it off with a little bow there, and just do some cleanup sort of stuff. Going back, reading through the comments again, and updating accordingly with people's suggestions and people's input in mind. But that's it. Yeah, like I said, sit back, relax, enjoy. We're going to dive in. All right, so last month, in our last video, this is where we left off. Full Metal Alchemist Volume 1. We decided it was going to stay. I'm not going to change that. It should absolutely stay. From there, we'll move on to our first book of today, which is Death Note, again, Volume 1. I think I'm going to keep this here. It's a horror manga, which could be fun. I feel like this is one of the big manga names, at least here in the US. This feels like one of the manga that transferred over here and people like it. So yeah, I think I'm comfortable leaving this on, although looking at the next one on the list, we have Uzumaki, which is kind of like feels like it's the horror manga. So maybe the move would be to actually remove Death Note in favor of keeping Uzumaki. And then if I like Uzumaki, if I like horror in my manga, maybe I'd come back to Death Note. Uzumaki is something, I think it's like, I think you can buy it as like a single book. It's not like a really long series. I think it's pretty short. All things considered. Yeah, it looks like there's volume 1, volume 2, volume 3, but you can buy just Uzumaki, like the whole thing, instead of getting it as volumes, which I don't know how long is that. Yeah, almost like 650 pages. So that's probably the one that I would pick up when I would get to this eventually. So I'm gonna remove this one here and just keep Uzumaki, the whole thing. So knowing that I'm gonna do that, I'm just gonna remove this one, the volume 1, from my list. But yeah, Uzumaki is something that I want to read. Berserk also is something that I definitely have interest in. This one, I don't know how to categorize this. Like I see that I have volume 1 and then I have the deluxe edition volume 1. I think I'm going to remove the deluxe edition of this in favor of just keeping volume 1 of Berserk, because again, I don't know how I'll read this. I'll probably read like a digital version of it. So yeah, I think Berserk volume 1, you will stay. Hunter x Hunter is also one that's been on my list. We're in like a manga section here. Hunter x Hunter is going to stay. This is one, my friend has been telling me to read this one for a long time. I'm reading One Piece on his recommendation, but at some point when I shift gears, I think Hunter x Hunter is definitely one of the front runners, although kind of all the ones that I'm keeping right now are front runners. So maybe I should be trimming some. I think he said this gets a little weaker by the end. So maybe this gets a cut. Sure, I'll cut this. Why not? Attack on Titan, on the other hand. Well, maybe not on the other hand. Maybe it's on the same hand. Attack on Titan, I am into. Like, I'm interested in Attack on Titan. I really liked the anime. I only saw the first season. So, I can't say, I guess, that I really liked it, but I really liked the first season. And maybe this stays. It's a horror manga, which makes sense to me based on the anime. I would like to know kind of more about the world that's being explored in this. So maybe this just stays. It could. But maybe it doesn't. No, maybe I kill it, because again, I don't need a million manga on my list. I need just like the first few that I want to read, or like the next few that I want to read, which Uzumaki does feel like that. Like I would love to get to that this Halloween season. Berserk does feel like that. But Hunter x Hunter, Attack on Titan, they feel almost like secondary reads. Like I get to them when I run out of the rest. And I could be so wrong. And if you're watching this and you read a lot of manga and you think that I'm doing myself a disservice by choosing Uzumaki and Berserk over the other ones that I've talked about today, please let me know. But I feel good about this as of right now, at least. This next one is also absolutely going to stay. This is the Lies of Locke Lamora. I feel like this is one of everybody's favorites. Everybody that loves this, I feel like it's often mentioned as, the one of the best. I think book 4, was this announced recently? Oh, I didn't realize how long of a series it was going to be. I think this was like announced recently or like teased, but I'm looking at the. Yeah, okay, it was not recently, 2019, huh? So okay, I guess this maybe is one of those books where it's we're not really sure if it's ever gonna come. Maybe that's the case, but I don't think I care about that. Yeah, I don't think I care about that. I really want to read this. I'm not really super afraid of reading series that aren't finished. Like I want to read A Song of Ice and Fire. I know that's not finished. It doesn't really bother me. Lies of Locke Lamora, sounds really cool from what I've heard, and I'm going to keep it. Kindred's tough. Only because I don't need a million... I don't need a million Octavia E. Butler books on my list, and I don't know which one I want to start with. I know I've left Parable of the Sower on the list, but maybe I'm having second thoughts about that. I really don't know where to start with Octavia E. Butler. Kindred, I believe, is the one where there's like sort of time travel, sort of. It's like more transportation than time travel, or like I think our main character finds herself being like swapped between present day and being back in time, and dealing with things like racism and other heavy, it says racism, sexism, white supremacy, then and now, and it's kind of exploring the differences, but I think more impactfully the similarities of then and now, which, I mean, that could be really good. That could be really cool. I mean, I know it's really good. I have no doubt that this is a very good book. The only thing is, and I might even go back, it might be worth it to go back and update the list to remove Parable of the Sower as well. For now, I'm just going to remove Kindred, and that is only because I have Dawn up on my shelf. That's the only Octavia E. Butler book that I own, and I should probably start with what I own, unless somebody out here tells me otherwise. If you think that Dawn is a bad starting point for Octavia E. Butler, please, please, please let me know, and I will change this. But for now, Kindred can go. Gardens of the Moon, Malazan, Book of the Fallen, or Malazan, I don't know how to pronounce it, but this stays. This stays. I don't really have much more to say about this one. I just know I want to read this, and I know that I will get to it. I just don't know when that will be. I know there's like a buddy read going, or I think actually several buddy reads going on for this book right now, on various YouTube channels and things like that. So maybe this is the year to get into it, but we'll see. But regardless, this stays. The Blade itself by Joe Abercrombie also is probably going to stay. The only reason that this might not is if there's a better starting point, but yeah, I think The Blade itself is where I would start with Joe Abercrombie, so that will stay. Here is the Berserk Deluxe Edition, Volume 1. Like I said before, I'm going to keep just regular Volume 1 on here and remove the Deluxe Edition. The Deluxe Edition are just like, they're huge. And the Volume 1 is just the actual first volume, like the little guy. So yeah, I don't need to commit to the massive version of like a collection of a lot of the volumes. I can just commit to the volume. And then similarly, here is Uzumaki, just like, here's Uzumaki, just the regular Uzumaki, not regular, the full collection of Uzumaki, kind of opposite to Berserk. I think with Uzumaki, it feels like it is so small and short and contained that I'll just commit to reading Uzumaki. I can always, DNF something, so that's probably what I'll do. Shaman King, oh, that's a fun one. Shaman King is a manga series that I started when I was like a kid, like in middle or high school. I remember going to Borders and just sitting on the floor of Borders and reading through this series, and I never finished it. I have heard that it gets bad at the end, or like, just at least much weaker at the end than it is at the beginning. But I don't know, it was fun enough, and I feel like I'll have enough nostalgia in it that I am going to keep this, because I would love to revisit this. I do remember, I thought it was really cool. It also taught me what a pompadour was. I didn't know what a pompadour was until Shaman King. It's just like big hair. Anyway, this is going to stay. The Picture of Dorian Gray. I talked about this pretty recently in my goals of 2025 when I talked about how I want to read classics, and The Picture of Dorian Gray is one of the classics that I want to read, and I have it upstairs on my shelf. So easy, that's going to stay. Hopefully it'll be removed from my TBR in a different way this year because I will have read it. That would be nice. The Sleeper and the Spindle. Here's one that I don't recall. Okay, we have a Neil Gaiman. And I actually also accidentally skipped over Snow, Glass, and Apples, also by Neil Gaiman. You can... I've mentioned it a couple times. I'm not going to have Neil Gaiman on my list right now. There's too much stuff going on with him, and I haven't started reading his works. It doesn't feel like the time that I need to start reading Neil Gaiman's work when there's so many other authors that have not been accused of what he has been accused of that I can more comfortably read. So I'm not going to spend much more time on that. I'm just going to skip over, move on to Down Among the Sticks and Bones. I see that this is a number 2, Wayward Children number 2. This does not sound familiar to me. Even Wayward Children does not sound familiar to me. Every Heart a Doorway. I don't know what this is. No solicitors, no visitors, no quests. Interesting. Okay, so it's a fantasy young adult mystery. I don't know. Could be cool, I guess. It's like gives me Chronicles of Narnia vibes with this like door here. Honestly, I'll figure it out when I get to Wayward Children number 1 if I want to keep that. But for now, I definitely don't need a Wayward Children number 2 on my list. I don't need a sequel on my TBR if I haven't read the first. There's no point to that. Wild Seed, another Octavia E. Butler. Again, I'm removing it only because I have Dawn on my shelf, and I think that maybe that's a good place to start. I know I bought it because I looked up where to start with Octavia E. Butler, and that came up. So maybe the one source that I checked was wrong, but I bought it on purpose, so I have it, and I do think it'll be good. I think that I'll enjoy it. The Bone Shard Daughter. Ooh, Robin Hobb gave it a 4-star. I feel like she almost always gives books 5 stars. So a 4-star from her feels alarming to me. I don't really know. I don't know really what this is. It does sound good. I'm reading the synopsis. It sounds cool. But I'm not sure. Bone Shard Magic could be really cool. I don't know. Honestly, it doesn't feel right. My gut is saying to just take it off the list. That feels fine to me. Daughter of the Moon Goddess. I think this has a gorgeous cover. It does have a gorgeous cover. I think that's probably 90% of the reason why it's on this list. Look at that. That's beautiful. That's crazy. Yeah, absolutely stunning. This is a romance, which is typically not my thing, but it is also mythology. And I have stated before that I'm interested in exploring more mythologies. I've read a handful of Greek mythology retellings or reimaginings, and this, I don't know what it is, but it's not Greek mythology, that's for sure. It is young adult. Wow, 6 Crimson Cranes also looks gorgeous. We're not here to add things. We're here to remove them. Ooh, Regan did not like this. Mair gave it a 3. Mair of Lady Mair Reads gave it a 3 stars. Yeah, I'm gonna remove it. It's got a gorgeous cover, and the synopsis sounds really cool, but for whatever reason, it's not doing it for me right now. So it's gonna go. Anxious People. I just recently was talking about Frederick Bachman again. I've talked about him several times throughout this series. Even I think it looks like I have 8 of his books on my TBR, and there's 2 in a row right here. I think still I don't know where to start with Frederick Bachman. I see I left a man called Ove on the list in a previous video, and I removed kind of like the rest. So here we are with these three. I mean, Beartown Anxious People and a man called Ove, or Uwe, I think is how to pronounce it. I have all three of those on my shelf. So I think I'm going to question mark all three of those and then just remove any other Frederick Bachman from this list. It's similar to Octavia E. Butler. I don't know what I'm doing. So if you have read a lot of Bachman and you disagree with any of those three as the starting point, or if you could help me narrow down from those three to just one, that'd be great. Stephen King, again, I mean, there's 13 Stephen King books on this list. I have so far just been removing Stephen King because I don't know where to start. A lot of people have weighed in on where to start with Stephen King, and I don't think Pet Sematary was the place. I am going to just remove it. I'm not going to forget Stephen King exists. I feel comfortable with that. I'm just going to remove Stephen King. There's too many options, and I will pick which one to start with when I pick which one to start with, and that's fine. William Gibson's The Peripheral. I know I removed Necromancer in one of these videos. I'm going to also remove The Peripheral. I watched the show that's based off of this by the same name. I think it's only one season. I'm not sure if it got canceled or what, but it was good. It was good, but not good enough that I feel like I need to read more about the characters or the story. I get it. I don't need more, I don't think. So I'm gonna remove that. Avatar. I really don't think I'm gonna keep Avatar on here. I love Avatar, to be clear. The show is fantastic. I just don't need, or I don't think I need to read it. I think I was introduced to it as a show, and that's all. I'm happy to leave it there. I don't know that I've heard incredible things about this. I mean, it's very highly rated, but I don't think I need it. The Humans by Matt Haig. I am a human. Maybe I could relate to this. It does sound kind of neat, but honestly, I have another Matt Haig upstairs on my shelf, The Midnight Library, and I'm going to remove this because if I'm going to start Matt Haig, may as well start with a book of his that I already own. Stephen King, we already talked about. I'm going to remove, not because I don't want to read him, but because I don't know where to start. Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. Now, okay, Robin Hobb, I will be reading this year. I'm doing it. I'm going to read at least one of Robin Hobb's books this year. Will it be Ship of Magic? Absolutely not. That would be such a silly choice. This is one of the books in her overarching series, The Realm of the Elderlings. Yeah, she's got The Realm of the Elderlings, and then there's a bunch of, I don't know that they're all trilogies, but kind of series within the overarching series. So the first one is the Farseer trilogy, and I recently picked up Assassin's Apprentice from that, and I will be reading that, I'm hoping, this month. So very soon, very early on in this year. Anyway, it won't be Ship of Magic. I've heard nothing but good things about Robin Hobb, so boom, that stays. Absolute Swamp Man. Swamp Thing by Alan Moore. I do think Swamp Man is neat, and I don't know a ton about them, but yeah, they're cool. I like the idea of it. I love the art. I've seen the artwork in this comic book, and it's gorgeous. I've heard that Alan Moore's Absolute Swamp Thing is like the place to go for Swamp Thing content. So absolutely going to stay here. Something is Killing the Children, also going to stay. This is a horror comic book, like an American comic book. I talked about some horror manga previously, but this I'm going to keep. I have almost picked this up a million times, And I don't know why. It's been an almost every time. I really want to read this. I've heard very good things. Even recently, I'm still hearing like people talk about this. So yeah, that's going to stay. I want to know what is killing the children. The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea is another absolutely gorgeous cover. Yeah, look at that. Again, all covers are a work of art, I guess, but like that's a work of art. You could hang that, on your wall. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. However, I don't think this feels like something that I'm going to like either. Again, it's this mythology, and it's a new mythology for me, and it's young adult, and it's romance, and it's fantasy, and all those things exist. I don't know. It just, for some reason, it doesn't stand out as something that I think I will actually enjoy reading. So it's gone. It's gone. I'm not going to think about it anymore. It's gone. Tell me if I'm wrong. Square Eyes. That's a really interesting title. It's so funny to me how many of these books on here that I feel like I'm hearing about for the first time when I read them off of my list. I have no recollection of knowing that this exists. Graphic novel. It's a dystopian graphic novel. It's not super well loved. Beautiful art, incomprehensible story it's not a great review of it. I mean, most of the ones that I'm scrolling past right now are very favorable of it. I don't have any recollection of hearing about this. I don't know that it sounds really all that good to me. So could be good, but I don't think it's for me right now. The Drowned Woods by Emily Lloyd Jones. I don't know this one either. Fantasy young adult mythology. Again, I don't know like what kind of mythology this is. I say that I want to branch out in my mythology readings, and then I've already cut two, and I am going to cut this one. It just doesn't, I don't know, a corgi that may or may not be a spy. Cute, but I don't know. That doesn't appeal to me really, so that's out. The Ghost Tree is again a book that doesn't sound familiar. Is this horror? It is horror. When people go missing in the sleepy town of Smith's Hollow, the only clue to their fate comes when a teenager starts having terrifying visions in a chilling horror novel. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, I do love a good vision in my books, but I feel like I have a lot of horror books that I want to read. Like there's a long list in my head of horror books that I really want to check out. And I don't know that I need to keep something like this on that list right now. Like I feel like there's some staples that I want to make sure I get through, because I don't even 100% know that I'm like a horror reader. I've enjoyed a lot of the horror that I've read, but some of it has not been great, and some of it has not hit for me. And I don't know if that's because it's horror or just because those books weren't spectacular, but I'm going to remove this one now. The Troop by Nick Cutter. Nick Cutter is an interesting one because I feel like I hear very mixed things about Nick Cutter. I will say that this does feel like it's on my list. Like I just talked about a mental list that I have, like a mental TBR of must-read horror. And I do think Nick Cutter feels like they belong on that list, but I do hear such mixed things about them, even from horror readers. Like I think he has a good amount of books. Yeah. And I think they all sit around the same rating. Like 3.84 seems to be, is that the highest one here? Yeah. Which again, there's nothing wrong with a 3.84. That's good. That's above average. And it has a ton of ratings, over 101,000 ratings. Yeah. Okay. I think I'll keep it. I think I feel good about that. Keeping The Troop. I'm fine with that. Beasts of New York by John Evans. I don't know what that is. A children's book for grown-ups. That's interesting. Violent, epic, action-packed, urban quest. Oh, animal characters? Huh. Interesting. I mean, that is a short synopsis. It's only got 67 reviews, 381 ratings. It's about a squirrel named Patch. It's fairly short. Where have I ever heard of this? How did this make it onto my list? I have no memory of this at all. It is funny that a story where the characters are animals is published by the Porcupine's Quill. I don't know. Maybe that stays. It sounds weird, different. I could be into that. Sure. Yeah, you stay. Peter Pan, I'm not going to bring up. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to keep Peter Pan on my list. It's a classic. And there's also, right after that, Watership Down, which, again, it's just going to stay. I want to read it. I think I've heard like mixed things on how well this story has held up. And I don't know if it's like good if you don't have the like nostalgic connection to it. Like if you didn't read it as a kid, maybe it doesn't hit as hard, but I'm curious enough about it. I really want to read The Bees, which I think I've heard is like Watership Down, but instead of bunnies it's bees. So I would like to read the two of them. The Princess Bride, again, is a classic that I feel like I don't need to talk about much. The movie is spectacular. I would love to read this, so it stays. The Complete Persepolis? What is that? Oh, okay, this is a graphic novel, right? Yeah, it is. I don't know what category to put this graphic novel in. It's a memoir, right? Yeah, okay, it's a memoir. Graphic novel that's a memoir. Interesting, during the Islamic Revolution. Interesting. There's a glowing review here by Patrick Rothfuss, which doesn't mean anything to me because I don't know him as a person and I have not read any of his books, but I mean, he loved it. That's cool. There's also a glowing review by this guy. That holds the same weight to me. But my friend Rae of Rae Loves to Read, she's another YouTuber here on the internet, gave it a 3-star. So I'm going to give this a question mark. I think it'd be wise to mark it as a question mark and come back here eventually after I talk to Rae and update its status. If it's a 3-star, so she didn't give it a 1-star. It's not irredeemable. Maybe she would have some insight into whether she thinks I specifically would like it. That would be very helpful. So I will find that out and update my list later. The Arrival. Is this the Arrival that I'm thinking of with the movie tie-in? Sean Tan. It is not. It doesn't look like it is. It's a graphic novel. Oh. Huh. Oh wow, the art is really nice. Yeah, the art looks very cool. I could keep that. It looks cool. Young adult graphic novel. The main character can't communicate in words. I like that. I think this sounds interesting. And I want to know what this is. So this stays. Yeah, sure. Avatar. I already talked about another Avatar book on here. I'm just going to remove it without even pulling it up. I just don't know. It just doesn't seem like I need it, really. Batman Hush. That's funny. I read Batman Hush. I love Batman Hush. I have it right there on my shelf. Yep. It's really good. I'm going to take this off. I actually own 2 copies of Batman Hush. This doesn't need to be here. Goodbye. Really good, though. Really good. If you are into Batman and you somehow haven't read Hush, definitely check it out. It was super fun. The Boy, the Fox. No. The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. This is an odd one. I have gifted this to 3 or 4 people because I think it looks beautiful. That not only the art, but the story that's being told in it. It's a very specific kind of graphic novel. It's like a self-help graphic novel. It's like every page essentially it's not a connected story from my understanding. It's or maybe it's overarching story is connected, but mostly what you're doing is just turning a page and it's like says something sweet, like a nice quote, and that's it. You turn every page is just a nice quote. Nothing wrong with that. I like that. And again, I've gifted it to several people who I think would like it based on the art style or just the fact that it is this nice, comfy, cozy hug of a book. So I'm going to keep that because I should read it myself. I would like to read it myself. Batman: A Death in the Family. This does stay, although, See, now I also feel like I've read this, but this is not on my shelf. Is it on my shelf? It's not on my shelf. So I don't think I read it. I feel like I've read it. But if I haven't, I want to, and that should stay. Batman: A Dark Victory. This one I know I have not read, but I also don't remember what it is, although I do know this cover. A sequel to The Long Halloween. Oh. Okay, well, A Long Halloween is fantastic. So this should stay. If it's a sequel to that, I would love to read that. I don't know that I've mentioned a lot of the comic books that I've read historically on this channel, but I have read a decent amount of comic books in my life. I haven't read a ton of like superhero comic books in the last few years. And the last one that I read very recently, I read Joker, and I didn't love it, but historically, I love superhero comics, specifically Batman. I am a Batman guy. I love Batman. And this next one here, Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, I've absolutely read this. And so anyway, I've read a lot of Batman, but there's a lot of Batman that I'm missing still. And some of them are classics. Like Death in the Family is one that I absolutely, again, I feel like I've read it, but I know that I haven't. But I should. And Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, I do also have read on my shelf over there. I have absolutely read this. I do not need this on here. It's hard sometimes with comic books because, like, look how many different, like, these are all the same thing, but they're split up differently. Like, I even have it marked red here, but that's like this 30th anniversary edition, which I don't even honestly know if that's accurate, like if that's the one that I read. But regardless, I don't need to read number 1 because I've read the whole thing already. I mean, I might reread it, but I don't need it on my TBR for a reread. Okay, back to books. The Last Quintessa. No, sorry, that's not how you pronounce that. The Last Quintista. That's better. This is a middle grade sci-fi book. I mean, it says middle grade and young adult. I have not read a middle grade book in probably since I was in that age group, but I feel like, was it Murphy Napier? Somebody on the internet, some big YouTuber, talked about The Last Quintista fairly recently. I mean, it was maybe in the last couple of years for sure. And I remember them talking of it and speaking so highly of it, and they really liked it. I can't remember. I think that's the case at least. And I added it because of that, and because, it doesn't feel like it is kind of like in my wheelhouse, but based on whoever it is that I'm thinking of and their description of it, I think it is worth a shot. So I am going to keep that on my list, even though it's in like an age range that I'm not so sure that I'm going to like click with. I'm curious. I'm curious about that one. Babel by R.F. Kuang. Okay, this one, interesting. I mean, okay, here's the thing. I love R.F. Kuang. But I don't know why. I for some reason am so convinced that I am going to love their books. I have not read any of their stuff. I think they're really cool as a person, though. They're like very impressive, and they, I follow them on Instagram, and they're always doing cool things. And I don't know. I hear they write good stuff. I want to read it all. I want to read The Poppy War. I want to read Babel. I really want to read Yellow Face, which is like a non-fantasy book that she wrote. But I don't know. I haven't read any of them. But this is one of the weird ones where I know I'm going to leave this on. I'm going to leave Babel on. And when I get to The Poppy War, I'm going to leave The Poppy War on my list as well. Which, I've been trying to cut down on doing that as I go through this list. Like, I don't need a million Stephen King books because I don't know where to start. R.F. Kuang, though, I know that there are 3 places that I could start with her, those books that I just mentioned. But I don't know that I think that it matters. Like, obviously I shouldn't read book 2 of the Poppy War first. I should read book 1 of the Poppy War first if I'm going to read the Poppy War first. But I'm not going to hold myself to reading any one of those before the others. So anyway, I'm rambling. That's going to stay. Paper Girls, the complete story, I will be removing. I am in the middle of reading Paper Girls. I've read I think about half of it actually at this point. So I don't need the complete story on here because it's comic books and there's a lot of different ways that they're released, and I own the books, like the big. There's 3 books of Paper Girls, and so I've read book 1 and I'm in the middle of book 2. So I don't need the complete story because I'm reading it book by book. Here's a Robert Kirkman book, notable because Robert Kirkman wrote The Walking Dead. I read Compendium 1 of The Walking Dead, and I want to continue reading The Walking Dead, and I know nothing about Outcast other than that I know Robert Kirkman was involved in it, and the cover is so cool. I think that's great. But I will be removing this because I don't know a ton about it. I don't know anything about it really, other than that it's written by him, and I liked some of The Walking Dead that I read, but I never finished The Walking Dead. Like I said, I actually never finished Compendium 1 even. I read most of Compendium 1 of The Walking Dead, and then for no reason at all, I stopped reading it. So, I have actually recently been thinking about like restarting The Walking Dead, just like in my free time, and I think I will be doing that. So I don't need this on here. True Biz by Sarah Novick. This is gonna stay. I think I've heard middle of the road things. I mean, it's got a 4 on Goodreads, which is good. It is a book. I don't know a ton about it, but it is focused on deaf or hard of hearing characters and their story. And I think it talks about like life at a school for the deaf. I have a lot of deaf family members. I care about deafness as a whole. It's close to my heart. I don't know that I think the story here is something that I'm going to care about, but I do know that I want to read it, or at least give it a shot. Danny here, I think Danny is one of our subscribers here. If you're watching this, hello, Danny. They said it's a fun and strong educational piece about deaf culture. I love that. I love that for everybody that's reading this book, that they're getting a glimpse into deaf culture. This note here about the seams in the storytelling. I like the way that's phrased, and I do think that might bother me, even though it didn't bother Danny so much. But yeah, again, I think this absolutely has to be on my list, just because of the subject matter alone. So I will be keeping that. Tales from the Cafe. Oh, okay, so I'm going to remove this, but not because I don't want to read it. Again, this and the next one, Before Your Memory Fades, it's book 2 and book 3 of a series. I want to read book 1. That's where I'll start, which is Before the Coffee Gets Cold. Book 1, Timothy Burbage of Timothy Burbage Reads on YouTube. He just read it recently, and he made it sound really, really good. And I've heard many times people talk about this book, the first one at least, saying how good it is, and it sounds again like a tearjerker maybe, or at least like it'll tug at parts of your heart. It sounds like a lot of the things discussed in book 1 are going to specifically impact me. It's the basic premise is you go to this cafe and there's one table where if you sit there and drink a coffee, you're transported back in time. And I don't know how exactly the mechanics of that work, but you go back and it seems like you relive some impactful piece of your life, and there's characters that go back and talk to family members that are passed on, and things like that. And it sounds really good, and it sounds like it will impact me extra now that I'm a father, which I didn't know until Timothy mentioned that in his review of it. But I think that's interesting. But yeah, I'm curious about that. I think that sounds really good. The Heart of the Sun Warrior. This is another one. I think it's Okay, Celestial Kingdom number 2. Yeah, Daughter of the Moon Goddess, which I removed. The covers here are just stunning. I want to take another second and zoom in there. It's so good. That's beautiful. But I took off book 1. I'm going to take off book 2 as well. Lore Olympus. Okay, I'm taking this off because Lore Olympus number 2 is what this is. But somebody just told me in the last video that I did like this, I think it was, that I should absolutely read Lore Olympus 1. So I am going to go back and fix that, but I don't need volume 2 on my list. Ducks. Okay, I don't know about Ducks. I don't know. I know about it, roughly. I know that I think the artwork in this is fantastic, and I know that the cover, for some reason, even though it's very simple, like it's like essentially grays and white and like yellow, is very simple, but I don't know why it stands out in my brain. Like I think about this a lot, like the cover alone. It's a memoir again, and it's like biographical, and it's not really about anything that I know anything about. Like it's about the what is it? It's like an oil thing, right? Alberta's oil rush. So that could be interesting, just to learn about something that I don't know anything about through this biographical graphic novel. I'm into it. It'll stay on the list. The Many Deaths of Layla Starr. This is also going to stay. I can't remember why I added this or when I added this, but I do know that that this is supposed to be very good. Humanity is on the verge of discovering immortality. The avatar of death is cast down to Earth to live a mortal life in Mumbai as 20-something Layla Starr. Really, really interesting concept. She is death, the avatar of death, and she's kind of tasked with will Layla take her chance to stop mankind from permanently altering the cycle of life, or will death really become a thing of the past? Really inventive. I love that idea, and not to mention the art, again, is stunning, which, I'm mentioning that a lot here, but especially for a graphic novel, that's important. So, I absolutely will be keeping that on the list. Flowers for Algernon, I'm going to keep. Again, it's a classic, and again, it's a book that I think is going to make me feel something. Like I've heard that it really squishes your heart, and I'm here for it. I'm ready for that. Black Cake, I'm going to remove Black Cake. I'm not going to pull it up. I just know my mother-in-law read it somewhat recently and said it was good, and that's enough. They didn't have like a glowing review of it, and so a real life person said that it was fine, and I can move on having not read that. Fairy Tale by Stephen King, I'm removing. The Lord of the Rings books 3 and 4 randomly gone, not because I don't want to read them, but because I haven't read book 1 or 2, so I definitely don't need 3 and 4. Book 1, I'm assuming, being The Hobbit. Book 2 being, the first book of The Lord of the Rings. I think I'd leave The Hobbit and Fellowship on here, but I don't need books 2 and 3. There's also every chance that I might just read like the collection of books 1, 2, and 3. Just The Lord of the Rings. So regardless, books 3 and 4 don't need to be in my TBR. Oh, and The Fall of Numenor as well. That doesn't need to be here because I don't know that I need more Middle-earth if I haven't read any of the others. Legion and the Emperor's Soul. Interesting. Was this collected in... Oh, interesting. Okay. I guess they took the Emperor's Soul and collected it with something called Legion at some point. This doesn't sound like it's Cosmere, so I don't care to read that necessarily right now. I have read The Emperor's Soul, and I do love The Emperor's Soul. I don't need this collection, or this, whatever you want to call it, this book of the two of these. Don't need it. Ordinary Monsters. I just recently have heard somewhat mixed things on this. It's got cool covers. I don't know much about it, but yeah, I don't know. I don't need it on my list right now. A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. This is a romantasy book. I just got my wife a different Rebecca Ross book Divine Rivals. So I have that in my house. If I'm going to read a Rebecca Ross, it'll be the one that I own. That's fine. Founderside by Robert Jackson Bennett. This I'm actually going to keep. Robert Jackson Bennett wrote The Tainted Cup, which I loved. And I think somebody recently just told me that I should read the rest of their works. But I don't know when I'll get to this, but I do think that it'd be nice to get to this, the Founders trilogy, especially because I really loved The Tainted Cup. So yeah, I'll keep that. The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. Wheel of Time, of course. I've not read any of it, but I absolutely want to at some point. I'm not in like a rush to get there, but I will be reading that, so that can stay. The Lost War by Justin Lee Anderson. This is gonna stay. I've heard really good things. Nona the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. This is book 3, and because of that, I will be removing it. I don't need it. I don't need this. I need Locked Tomb number 1, Gideon the Ninth. So Nona is gone. Upgrade by Blake Crouch. I think I left Dark Matter on my list, so I think I'm going to remove this. But, I mean, Blake Crouch is another one of those authors where I don't necessarily know where to start, but I think I'll start with Dark Matter. I think I feel good about taking Upgrade off. House in the Cerulean Sea is the next one up on my list. Absolutely going to stay. Again, I own this. It's like a cozy queer book. It's supposed to be really, really good. The sequel is out, and I've heard it's also really, really good. So this can stay. Love it. The Measure I am going to remove. My wife started it, and she was like, it's okay. She didn't finish it. And so I think based on that alone, I'm good. I'm good to skip it. Dead Silence, I know, has a really cool, to me, cover. It seems like a space horror, like sci-fi horror, which I think sounds like it could be really good. I think I did watch one like fairly unfavorable review of it on the internet. I don't remember who it was by, but it sounds cool to me, so I am going to keep that one. The Atlas 6. Oh, that's got a lower rating than I thought it did. Interesting. I thought this was like one of the staples. They loved it. They didn't love it. You know, I might remove it. The synopsis just doesn't really speak to me in this current moment. Yeah, I'm going to take it out. It's off my list. I think maybe I was confusing this with The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which is on my TBR. So, yeah, I don't need that. The Maid. I'm also going to remove The Maid. This, there is a show. I don't know if the show is any good, but I think I could just watch the show if I really care to check this out. Ooh, Rae hated it. She hated it. All right, Rae, I hear you. It's out. Goodbye. Howl's Moving Castle is going to stay. I'm not going to spend any more time on that. It's going to stay. I want to read it. That's it. Man Called Otto. Is there a book? Wait. I thought A Man Called Otto was the movie based on A Man Called Ove. What the heck is this? Meet Ove. Yeah. Wait. Oh. Okay. I think when they made the American movie, they named it A Man Called Otto. And then they went here on Goodreads and updated or like added an entry as a book for A Man Called Otto, probably to like avoid confusion of people like looking up the book that the movie was based off of. But I would argue that this added more confusion to me, at least, because this isn't a real book, or like it is, but it's not. A Man Called Otto doesn't exist as a book. Anyway, it's gone. Again, I have A Man Called Ove or Uwe, and that is on my list. T. Kingfisher, The Seventh Bride, and A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. These two, I'm not sure what to do with. I love T. Kingfisher. The Seventh Bride is not one that I remember hearing of, but I would probably love it. But it's not like the next T. Kingfisher that I want to read. Same with A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. This one Sounds really cute, honestly, but I think it is, like, again, targeted at a younger audience. I could be wrong there. It's young adult. I don't know. It could be really cute. Again, this is one that definitely Murphy Napier was talking about this one. She talked about it several times on her channel. She likes it a lot and makes it sound pretty solid, but it's not next for me. And I know it exists, and I know I love T. Kingfisher, and next I want to read A Sorceress Comes to Cull, and then when I finish that, maybe I'll add one of these back to the TBR, but for now, I don't need these. I know where to find them when I do need to add them. The Passenger 2 is gonna be removed. Stella Maris. Oh, okay. This is the late Cormac McCarthy's latest duology. And yeah, it's book 2 I don't need on here, so that can go away. Richard Neal does not sound familiar to me. Kings of Paradise, Ashen Sound #1. I think this might have been like an SPFBO finalist. Like, I think it's an independent book, dark fantasy. It could be fun. I'm into it. I mean, I'm into the idea of it. The synopsis sounds good. It's been reviewed by Patrick over here. He gave it a 4-star. He's Patrick. He's huge in the YouTube space or the booktube space, and he's pretty reputable. I tend to agree with his ratings of books, so I'll keep that on here. I feel like I may have added it based on the video by him. That could be wrong, but we'll see. Bottled Up. Ooh, Bottled Up is like not necessarily a book that feels like it's in my like wheelhouse, but my brother liked this when we were kids, I remember, and I have it on my shelf. I think it's his copy of the book, and forever I've been planning on reading it. I just never got around to it, but it stays because I do want to check that out. The Lightning Thief by Percy Jackson. No, not by Percy Jackson, by Rick Riordan. It's a book about Percy Jackson. This is like a young adult Greek mythology fantasy book, and I'm super into it. I love the idea of it, so that's going to stay. I haven't gotten around to it, but I want to. The Forgetting Moon is another one that's absolutely going to stay. It's by Brian Lee Durfee, who is an author, but he's also on YouTube. And I've heard a lot of really good things about this book. Tom Orange just recently-ish read The Forgetting Moon and loved it. Like, loved it. Said it's one of his top books of like all time, he thinks, I believe. So, yeah, that'll stay. It's a meaty book, but I've heard really good things. So this can stay. We've got a lot of stays in a row. Jennifer Saint, I talked about a lot in a previous video. I'm going to remove this one. It is a Greek mythology retelling, but I don't know that I'm going to love Jennifer Saint's books, so that can go. The Plot, I don't know what that is. The book series #1. What a title. Mystery thriller. I'm going to just remove it. Honestly, it has no appeal to me in this current moment. It's possible that it's very good, but I don't want it. Flames of Mira. This has been very well received. I guess, I mean, it doesn't have the highest rating here on Goodreads, but Andrew Watson, who I like, I take his opinion seriously on books. So we have very similar tastes in general when it comes to books, and he loves this book. I don't think he's read book 2 yet, so shame him about that, Into the Rift. But yeah, I absolutely think this sounds cool. It's got like a cool magic system. It sounds like the premise is interesting. I'm into it, so that stays. How Do You Live? I don't know what this is. Let's find out. Interesting. Oh, wow. That's high praise. It compares it to The Alchemist and The Little Prince, both of which I read, both of which I enjoyed. I didn't love either, but I thought they were both good. So maybe this is worth checking out. It's also it's Japanese literature, which I don't know that I've read translated Japanese literature, really. I don't think. At least not the classics. So I'll keep it because that could be cool. It could be nice to do that. Yeah, I think I'd like to check that out. Okay, we have a Scott Snyder, Undiscovered Country. Oh, I remember this. I think I'm gonna remove it. It's like interesting. It's like people discovering America, but like later. I don't know, or like it doesn't exist until it does, or yeah. I don't need this. It's got a lot of capital letters in the synopsis here. Feels like it's yelling at me. Goodbye. Hyperion. Again, another one that's just like so big. I feel like I don't need to mention it really. This'll stay. It's big sci-fi. It's like one of the all-time great sci-fis, and yeah, it stays. I want to check that out. Somewhat similar is Ninth House. I feel like this is, again, it's just a massive name. I have this again upstairs on my shelf. That'll stay. I do want to read that. Winter's Orbit. I don't know what that is. I don't know. It doesn't really do anything for me. It could be interesting, but it doesn't need to be on my list, I don't think. Poppy War, I've already talked about. It will be staying. I'm excited for that. I will keep that. This one, this is Kaiju number 8, volume 4. Yeah. I really liked Kaiju number 4, like volume 1. I thought it was really cool and fun. And then volume 2, I liked a lot also. But by the end, I was like, okay, it's, maybe losing me. And then volume 3 fell a little flat. I don't know. Maybe I should give it another shot because I did only read 3 volumes, so maybe I should check out volume 4. But I don't know. It kind of lost me. If you've read Kaiju number 8, let me know if it's worth it for me to like get back into it. Maybe I'll consider it. I'm gonna put a question mark here though for now. Grady Hendrix, How to Sell a Haunted House. I think I am going to remove this. I've read one Grady Hendrix and I liked it. And I want to read more Grady Hendrix, but I want to read the Southern Book Club or whatever. The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. Yeah, that sounds great. This book here. So that's going to stay on my list. I think it's already on here. I think I've already talked about it in a previous video. But How to Sell a Haunted House can go. 2 more. The Traitor Baru Cormorant. Yes. The Masquerade 1. This stays. I can't, again, remember who talked about this recently, or maybe not that recently on the internet, but I do remember that they loved it. Ooh. Christopher Buehlman. I love Christopher Buehlman. If he liked this, then I want to like it. So that stays for sure. And then finally, number 400 on our list, The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington. This one is tricky. I did not like The Will of the Many by James Islington. Or it's not that I didn't like it, but it's that I liked it. I liked it. I wanted to love it, and I feel like everybody that I know loves it. Why do I have my headphones in? I have had that in this whole time. I've been recording for an hour and 20 minutes. I've had my headphone in doing absolutely nothing the entire time. Anyway, I don't know. I don't know if I need more James Islington. I wasn't blown away by The Will of the Many. These are big books. I'm not super excited by this author. I think I am going to remove it, honestly. And that is it. That brings us to book 400. We're done. We did it. We got to 400. There's a lot of good stuff in there. We cut out a lot, but we're getting to the point where it's getting more and more recent. Every video that we do, it's getting more and more recent. And the books that I've added recently are much more tailored to the taste that I've discovered over the years. So I think it's getting harder to take some of these out, but what we're also accomplishing is taking out a lot of the clutter of, books that I've already read that, I have a different edition marked as want to read on here, removing books in a series that I haven't started is always great. Things like that. So we're removing a lot of the clutter, and we are cutting out still a decent number of books from the list. So very excited that this is still working. I hope it continues to work. I hope we continue to be able to cut things out of this list. Today we only managed to cut out 55 books out of this 100, which is still really good. But it's getting a little harder to do. And there were a few in there that we left a question mark. A few books that I need to consider a little bit more before I can make any final decision on those books. But we're still doing great, and we're getting closer and closer. We're roughly almost halfway through the list at this point. The next video will go past that halfway point, which is exciting. So yeah, plenty more of these videos to come. If you've enjoyed this, let me know. If you have feedback on kind of the format and things that you think I should improve going forward, let me know. And yeah, make sure you give me any feedback on books that I left in that you think I should take out, books that I took out that you think I should put back in. And if you have any input on, like Stephen King, Frederick Bachman, Octavia E. Butler, where to start with any of their work, let me know that too. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye.